Shanghai's summer had a way of sticking to skin and thoughts alike, and her tiny sixth-floor apartment held heat like a clenched fist. The curtains were open to the city's grainy glow, car horns and the low growl of life rose from the streets. Bao, her scrappy, loyal mutt, lay sprawled over the tile with his tongue out, a panting punctuation mark to the day. Mei Lin had set the new doll on the shelf, a golden, limited edition Labubus with fox-long ears and a smile too wide for comfort, and watched it catch the amber light like a lit match refusing to go out. Just a toy, she told Bao, who disagreed by way of a growl so deep it seemed to rumble through the floorboards. He never growled at her collection. Not the wooden prickly-haired troll from Reykjavik, not the porcelain twins from a Prague flea market, not the ill-tempered bobblehead that used to rattle at the slightest breath of air. Bao loved them all, but the golden Labubus? His lips peeled back, his hackles did a slow, reluctant rise. She laughed, soft and tired. "You're such a baby." But Bao didn't laugh. He stared and stared until his eyes watered. Mei Lin had not been a city girl by birth. She brought the village with her. The habit of saving tea leaves, the careful quiet way she folded clothes, the reflex of putting others first. She'd come to Shanghai after her father's death, after a long winter that gnawed every edge of certainty. In the city, life came priced by the minute. She took the first job that would have her. A clerk at a toy shop. One of those bright, curated places with a wall of blind boxes that turned adults into gamblers and kids into prophets. That was where the Labubus entered her life. A fresh shipment that sent people buzzing, hands shaking, eyes sweeping every shelf like searchlights. Pop Mart had made the character a phenomenon, monster cute, wide-eyed, toothy grin, and the latest drop included a rare golden variant. The store sold out in hours, but the manager had put one aside for display, and Mei Lin, with the trembling ache of a collector's desire, asked if she could buy it after close. She paid more than she could afford. She brought it home wrapped like something that bleeds. She had to admit it, the doll was beautifully made. The fur looked molten at different angles, the eyes were glass blue like deep pool water, the teeth too many to count in one glance. She hugged it, took photos, sent her sister a video clip, "Look how cute," and introduced it to the rest of her doll family. Bao kept his distance, pacing a nervous route between door and couch, nails clicking a beat that gave the room a pulse. "Hey," she murmured, placing the Labubus high on the shelf. "Behave." The first laugh came around 3 in the morning. Soft, blister sweet, like a child trying to mimic an adult's chuckle, and getting the timing a little wrong. Mei Lin jerked up. The room returned to normal. AC hum, the half-open window, Bao's soft snore. She told herself she was dreaming and lay back down. The laugh came again, closer now. She turned toward the shelf. The Labubus sat in shadow, a silhouette of ears and grin. The grin was different, wasn't it? Wider? She couldn't be sure. Her chest tightened. She stood, padding across the floor, heart drum rolling. Up close, it was just vinyl and plush and paint. A doll. She pushed it back 2 inches, aligning it with the other figures like a tiny commander inspecting an army. She returned to bed and slept a sleep that felt like falling. At the shop the next day, she snapped at a customer. It was not like her. That was a thing her manager told her as he asked for her key and her apron and her dignity, all in one strained whisper. She walked the long way home. The city pressed in, a shimmer behind glass, a prickle under her skin. She thought, "I have never been a person who yells." She thought, maybe there was something wrong with me all along, and the city just widened the crack. When she opened her front door, Bao shot past her ankles and ran straight to the bathroom. She found him trembling in the tub like a storm dog hiding from thunder. "What's gotten into you?" she asked, though part of her, the part that already knew, did not want to hear the answer. She slept early that evening, dreamless until she wasn't. The dream came on like drowning. A red thing with a flayed shine, claws like knives, laughter that vibrated her ribs. It opened its mouth too wide. The teeth kept going. It reached for her throat, and as she tried to scream, the thing's breath burnt cold across her face. She woke with a gasp to weight on her chest. The golden Labubus sat there, glass eyes bright, teeth tiny knives of light. Mei Lin did scream. Bao barreled into the room, hurled himself at the doll, and shook it with a violence she had never seen in him. Stitching popped, limbs tore, foam squealed under his teeth. She staggered to the trash and shoved the wreckage in, hands shaking, cheeks wet. Bao sat, panting, gaze locked on the bin as if waiting for it to breathe. "It's over," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "It's just a toy." It was not over. In the morning, her skin itched with a constellation of little red bites, neck, wrists, the soft place inside her elbows. A headache throbbed like a bruise. She called for Bao, but silence answered. The apartment's emptiness turned heavy, sour. She searched places dogs love and places dogs hate. She ended up in the kitchen with her mouth dry and her hands cold. The smell hit first, copper and heat. She looked down into the sink. Blood-smeared steel. A strand of fur clung to the drain. She looked under the sink, and the world fell to a needlepoint. Bao lay in a terrible stillness, torn as if chewed by metal. No amount of closing her eyes could unsee the way his body folded. Her mind struck a match called denial. Maybe the alley cats, maybe a break-in by something wild. Maybe the Labubus was on the counter. Intact, gold bright as noon, teeth wet. She fled then, not even sure which direction her feet had chosen until she found herself in the stairwell, back pressed to cracking paint, phone in her hand. Instinct leaned her toward the internet. The world's voice, the world's rumor. She typed like someone trying to unlock a door with the wrong key. Labubus doll cursed, help, is it cursed, is it a demon, how to get rid of it? The search results poured out like a nervous confession. An explainer about why people were suddenly linking Labubus to the Mesopotamian demon Pazuzu. Purely internet conspiracy, it said, fueled by the doll's toothy grin and big eyes and a summer's worth of viral posts. Celebrities had been photographed with them. People were spooked. The article's tone tried to be rational and calm, the way you talk to someone who hears tapping in the walls. Another piece recapped the panic and debunked the demon theory outright. Labubus was created by artist Casing Lung, drawn from fairy tale strangeness, not ancient evil. Blind box marketing and scarcity did the rest. No demon, no curse. Just hype turned hysterical. Yet another article, lank with skepticism, walked through the viral rumors beats and noted there was no verified evidence of hauntings. Mass hysteria, some called it. Algorithmic fear, cute toys plus uncanny design plus a slow news week equals fire. But the internet is a hydra. Cut one head of reason and 10 anecdotal heads snarl back. She found a Reddit thread, casual and cold at once. Someone worrying their Labubus felt off. Commenters half joking about cameras, knives, the old mallet and trash method, as if brutality could be a love language when directed at plastic. Then there were the headlines like sparks in a dry field. Influencers burning their dolls, saying they'd woken to find them moved closer to the bed, eyes reflecting ambient light like animals in a forest. Some claimed nosebleeds, nightmares, pets panicking. Most of it read like theater until you remembered your own sink, your own dog, your own shaking hands. She scrolled and the world tilted. Another commentary piece made fun of the panic while admitting the vibe was eerie. The internet thinks Labubus are demonic. The words floated like oil on water. A listicle-style fact-check said, no real cases, hoaxes likely, psychological suggestion heavy. The advice was boring and sensible. If it creeps you out, don't keep it. Also, be careful of fakes. Counterfeit plush and keychains were being seized for safety hazards, small parts that could choke a child, chemicals that shouldn't be in anything that touches a mouth. That last bit popped like a flash grenade, hazard, seizure, warning, because fear likes a foothold in the tangible. Mei Lin swallowed and wiped her face. She returned to her apartment with a narrow, purposeful calm and did what the internet disagreed with itself about. She burned the doll to ash. She stood on the fire escape over a steel bowl with a disposable lighter and a can of hairspray like a terrible campfire. The plastic stank. It bubbled and slumped and blackened, then flaked to a gray that the wind tried to steal. She scraped it into a jar with a spatula and took a late bus to the river. Under the bridge, she turned the jar and watched the ash cloud the dark water like a bruise. Back home, the apartment looked the same as always, which is to say, it looked like a place a person lived. She thought about calling her sister and did. She didn't talk about blood or bites or the way laughter filled the apartment like steam. She said only that she'd had a bad few days, that Bao was gone, that she was lonely, that the city felt like a hollow she couldn't fill. Her sister made the sounds people make when they worry and promised to visit soon. The call ended. The room held its breath. Mei Lin slept and did not dream. She woke at dawn to a soft scrape from the kitchen. A chair leg? A fingernail on tile? The sound became a memory before she could be sure. She sat up slowly, every muscle negotiating. She stood, walked the hallway like a diver rising, and turned into the kitchen. The golden Labubus stood on the counter, as clean as a lie. There were things a person is supposed to do in moments like this. Pray, run, laugh it off, Film it, for proof. Mei Lin did the fourth without choosing it. She lifted her phone with hands that looked like someone else's and started recording. Say hi, she whispered to the inanimate. The doll smiled its painted smile. The minute her eyes left it, to check the frame, to see if the lens was smudged, it moved. Just a tilt of the head. The ears seemed to cant a fraction. Maybe the light shifted, maybe she swayed, maybe the camera's small brain corrected a wobble into meaning. She recorded for 8 minutes and 13 seconds. Nothing else happened. She watched it back 3 times. On the 4th, she noticed something she hadn't before. Her own reflection in the window, behind the doll, looked wrong. Her face was longer, her teeth sharper. For 2 frames, her eyes glowed with the blue of the doll's glass. She shut the phone off and put it face down. They say the mind is a projector, not a camera. It throws its own film onto the world and calls whatever sticks a fact. Mei Lin wasn't in the mood to debate epistemology with a toy. She took the heavy glass jar she used for pickled plums and slammed it down over the doll like a bell. The ring it made chased the shadows out of the corners. The Labubus looked innocuous inside the jar, a genie trapped with no wish to give. She taped the rim, then taped the tape, a ridiculous corset of clear plastic pressing closer and closer until her fingers cramped. She carried the whole contraption to the bathroom, filled the tub, and lowered the jar in. Air forced itself out in a rush of bubbles that made her think of drowning. She left it there and went to work on her resume. People say routine is a raft. She updated bullet points, polished verbs, removed the little, the very, the almost. She drank lukewarm tea. By noon, lured by an emptiness that felt personal, she opened the fridge and found a single egg, some wilted greens, and a block of tofu that had aged into a kind of quiet shame. She closed the fridge, she opened it again. Nothing had changed. That was when the humming started. A thin, sawtooth sound. In the bathroom, the jar had fogged with condensation. The doll inside pressed against the glass, not by any motion she could see, but by a pressure she could feel in her teeth. The tape had bubbled. A small, jagged line crept along the glass like a crack thinking about commitment. Mei Lin stood very still. You're not real, she said, and the room heard the lie. There's a point where fear becomes righteous. She hit that point like a matchhead. She pulled the jar up, water cascading onto her legs, and carried it dripping into the kitchen. She didn't own tools that meant business. She had a paring knife, a cheap hammer for hanging frames. The stove would have to do. She turned the gas high, set the girdled jar over the burner on 2 iron spoons, and stepped back. Heat climbed, tape went to glossy. The jar groaned. The crack, with a sigh, became several. The doll leaned, yes, leaned, it had to, toward the place where the glass thinned. It burst. The noise knocked her back against the counter. The doll thudded to the tile, rolled, and came to a stop in a posture that mocked sleep. She picked up the hammer with 2 hands and smashed. Once for bow, once for the way laughter sticks to air, once for the way a city makes you think you'll never be held the same way again. She kept swinging until the head came off and the torso gave and the ears buckled and the teeth skittered in many directions like beetles that had learned to impersonate enamel. She gathered pieces into a black trash bag. She double-bagged, triple-knotted, hauled it downstairs, and stuffed it into the building's metal dumpster. The lid slammed with the finality of a judge. She stood a second longer, listening to the metallic cooling clicks, and returned upstairs on legs that felt like they'd been borrowed. She showered hot and long. She let the water tap out its mindless rhythm against tile. She breathed, she dressed, she sat at the table and opened her laptop to put the internet between her and the day. The internet obliged, as it always does, by giving her more of the things she feared and less of the things she needed. A magazine piece rounded up the panic and the backlash and the profit margins. A fashion site made the curse trend chic. Another outlet rolled its eyes but wrote 500 words anyway. Someone on Substack linked the rumor to a Simpsons bit about Pazuzu and possession. The meta-ness of it all made her headache bend into a new shape. A sober fact-check said again what the first sober fact-check had said. No, the toy wasn't based on Pazuzu, and no, there was no evidence beyond stories. And yet those stories multiplied like mold. A Facebook group post told of a man in Lagos who'd brought home a knockoff Labubus and watched his household unravel like a cheap sweater. Objects gone missing. Shadows where shadows didn't belong. Counterfeit, he wrote, as if that explained the angle of a bruise. Another Indian tabloid ran with a headline so breathless it had to sit down between words. People were getting rid of their Labubus dolls, calling them satanic, calling them cursed, calling them the end of innocence. The story read like a campfire. The comments read like a mob. Each link was a stone. Each stone built a house she did not want to live in. The intercom buzzed around 7. Mei Lin flinched. Her neighbor, Auntie Zhang, needed help with a parcel. They stood in the hall making small talk that felt like two people pretending they were not alone in the world. You look tired, Auntie Zhang said, because she told the truth the way some people collect stamps. Eat something tonight. I will, Mei Lin said, and almost believed her. When she closed the door and turned, something in the corner of the living room caught her eye. A smudge on the white wall, faint, high. She climbed onto the couch to wipe it and froze. The smudge wasn't dirt, it was soot. 4 little trails like fingertips climbing. She traced them to the shelf. The Labubus sat there, whole, gold, smiling an inch wider than memory. There is a sound the human throat makes only once. It is the sound of the brain realizing it has been demoted. Mei Lin made that sound. Then she made another. Laughter that came out wrong. Fine, she told the room. Let's be rational. She put the doll in a backpack. She took her wallet and her keys and a bus card and left the apartment like she was going somewhere ordinary. At the second stoplight, she changed her mind and walked. She cut through a block of old Lilong Lane houses that held the city's history like a secret and came out on a road she'd never taken. There, behind a row of shuttered shops, she found what she needed. A narrow temple I Ching shop with a wooden counter scarred by years, incense thick as soup, an altar crowded with faces that had seen everything. The woman at the counter barely looked up. You want candles or counsel? She asked. Counsel, Mei Lin said. Her voice tried to vanish. And maybe a bag of salt. The woman's mouth curled. Salt is easy. Counsel is expensive. Mei Lin put the backpack on the counter and unzipped it like a wound. The golden head peered out. Ah, the woman said, not surprised. A Labubus. We have had 2 of those this week. Mei Lin's fingers went numb. What did you tell them? That fear is a very good salesman. The woman slid the bag back. But also, sometimes objects become what we make of them. If 10,000 minds focus on a shape and say, curse, the shape starts to fit the story. The mind is a hand that leaves fingerprints. Mei Lin waited for the part where the woman admitted it was a fad and sold her a charm for show. It did not come. What do I do? Choose, the woman said, as if that were a thing people do easily. If you intend to break a story, you must mean it. Fire is old, but you tried that, yes? Water is old, but you tried that, too. Burial is older. The river swallows and forgets. The earth remembers and changes. Dig, then, but dig deep, and be sure. How deep? As deep as your certainty. The woman smiled in a way that made Mei Lin ache. Also, don't bring it back to your house again. Even stories get comfortable. Mei Lin paid too much for salt and joss sticks and a small shovel meant for plants. The woman gave her a paper talisman she did not charge for. This is for your doubt, she said. Burn it when you choose your spot. The city sleeps badly, but it does nap. Near midnight, Mei Lin walked to a patch of municipal green near the river where no one would ask questions. She stepped into the dark and let the grass wet her ankles. She burned the talisman and watched its ash rise like a flock of thin moths. She salted the ground, a ring drawn by a shaky hand. She started to dig. The shovel hit stone, then root, then a soft seam that gave like breath. An hour passed and then another, measured by the sound of traffic dwindling to singulars. 1 car, 1 train, 1 voice somewhere arguing with a ghost. She set the backpack in the hole and poured more salt, whispering nonsense or prayer. She covered it, tamped it with the heel of her shoe, smoothed the ground like a bed for a child who will not sleep. She stood and wiped her hands and felt nothing like peace, which meant she was still alive. She slept 3 hours that night and dreamed of Bao smiling with human teeth, which was how she knew the mind will drag anything into a myth if you let it. Days passed, her bites faded, the headache took a vacation. The laughter stopped, she applied for jobs, and someone liked her verbs. She bought a new leash she didn't need and put it in a drawer like a promise. In the evenings, she watched the sun brown the city and wondered if grief had a shape or if it was a gas that slowly filled any container you gave it. On the 7th night, her sister sent a link with 5 flame emojis. Have you seen this? It said. Mei Lin tapped, knowing better. A video compilation. People burning Labubus dolls on balconies and in backyards. A caption. Woke up to Labubu closer to my bed. Comments were a mess of mockery and devotion. The clip stank of algorithm. But in one frame, for a heartbeat, Mei Lin saw her own living room. No, a room like hers, with the same IKEA shelf, the same twinkle lights, the same wall smear she'd scrubbed until the paint lightened. The doll on the shelf turned its head. The camera shook. The person filming swore in a language Mei Lin didn't know. The clip ended. The Economic Times. She didn't notice the second link from her sister until later. A fact check. A reassure. This is panic, it insisted. This is a story people are telling themselves to feel something in a numb world. She appreciated the neatness of it. She saved it for later, the way you save a receipt you will never use. Snopes. At midnight, the intercom buzzed again. Mei Lin's heart performed a small stunt. She went to the door without asking who. No one stood there, only a package, paper wrapped, string tied, with her name written in a careful hand that made each letter sit up straight. She brought it inside, set it on the table, and stared at it like an animal from a different ecosystem. She untied the string. She unfolded the paper. Inside, another Labubus, not golden, white, with blue-tipped ears and a grin that remembered winter. A note tucked beneath. For your collection. I heard you lost your rare one. Thought this one might comfort you. L. She knew no L's. She looked for a return address. There was none. Her first thought was, someone is unkind. Her second thought was, the world is striped with coincidence and cruelty. Her third thought was neither and both. Bow. She placed the doll gently on the table as if daring it to breathe. I'm not playing, she said, and her voice came out low and steady, the way her father's had when he told storms to wait. She fetched a giant zip-top bag and a box cutter. She slipped the doll inside, sealed it, and took the knife to the bag's plastic with an edge that skated and sang. Air hissed, but then, air always hisses when displaced. She turned the bag over. She turned the room's silence over. She found nothing she could use as proof in a courtroom built for gods. In the morning, she carried the doll to the municipal green and dug again in the same place because the mind likes repetition when it pretends it control. The shovel hit something hard after 6 inches. She cursed softly and cleared dirt with careful fingers. A backpack, the one she had buried. The zipper sat open, which it had not been when she left it. The inside was empty. She looked around as if expecting footprints circling her in some hymn to cinema, but the grass revealed only one set, hers. She buried the new doll anyway, then stamped the earth in a rhythm that meant don't come back. Back at her apartment, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Not about curses but about danger with a different face. Authorities in the US and Europe warning against counterfeit plushes and keychains labeled as Labubus, cheap knockoff small enough to choke on, with detachable parts, with chemicals that should stay in labs. The photos didn't look like hers, but the word fake had a way of sticking to anything once it got close. Houston Chronicle, L. Pays, The Sun. She read it all anyway. She refreshed. She let the world's fear pour through her like rain through a grate. The truth was boring and terrifying in equal parts. Most hauntings are stories that find a home in us because we have a room for them. Most objects hold only what we put in. But sometimes, 10,000 rooms line up like mirrors and make a corridor, and in that corridor you can see very far indeed. That evening, at the small desk where she had once cut out paper dolls and once filled out school forms and once written to her father in a notebook he never got to read, Mei Lin made a choice that tasted like metal. She packed her remaining dolls, all of them, bubble-wrapped like arthritic saints, into 3 boxes. She labeled them for donation. She kept only one. A soft, ridiculous stuffed turnip a friend had given her as a joke, because grief and joy are both better when they pretend to be vegetables. The doorbell rang again. This time she checked the peephole. A woman stood there, late 20s, shaved head, smiled tired as early morning. She held out a Labubus doll, the regular brown, not golden. You the girl from the shop? She asked through the door. I heard you collect. You want this? I can't. I don't want it in my house anymore. Mei Lin kept the chain on. Why? The woman shrugged. My boyfriend got spooked. He says it laughs at night. I think he heard the neighbor's TV, but once he got it in his head, I couldn't sleep either. If you don't want it, I'll throw it away. Throw it away, Mei Lin said, surprising herself with the clean edge of the words. Or bury it, or give it to the river. Or sell it to someone who wants to feel something. Just not here. The woman half smiled like someone relieved to be dismissed from a class she never wanted to take. Fair enough. She left. Mei Lin watched her go down the hall and into the elevator and into the city that will take anything you give it and ask for more. That night, the laughter did not come. The city found another story to tell. Online, the rumor cycle spun, as it always spins, through panic and backlash and monetization and boredom. Opinion pieces stacked like a game of Jenga. A neat explainer linked to another neat explainer. The rational claimed a victory it hadn't earned. The irrational claimed a victory it couldn't prove. Somewhere a brand pivoted. Somewhere a priest performed a ritual for a camera. Somewhere a kid slept with a plush under their cheek and dreamed a dream not meant for marketing. At Mathrubhumi, Pajiba, India, weeks later, when a box arrived from her sister full of village things, dried mushrooms, candied hawthorn, a knitted hat too warm for Shanghai, Mei Lin felt the shape of her own life return like a bird choosing the old branch. She took a job at a different store, the kind that sells notebooks that make you think you will write more and pens that make you think you will write better. In the afternoon, she would pour tea and watch the door and wonder at the way humans will pay to be frightened by the things they buy and the things they read and the things they tell each other to ward off the things that truly frighten them. Sometimes she walked by the municipal green and pressed her heel into the dirt where she had buried and reburied her fear. Once she even brought a sprig of jasmine and tucked it into the grass like a secret she was willing to share. She did not think of Bao every second anymore, which broke her heart in a new way that was also a kind of healing. Memory is a house with many rooms. Time redecorates when you aren't looking. She still kept the paper talisman the shopkeeper had given her, an extra one she hadn't burned, inside a book on her nightstand. Not for magic, for metaphor. On bad days, she would hold it between finger and thumb and say, out loud, to no one and everyone, I choose. On a late autumn evening, as dusk melted into the streetlights and the first winter wind remembered the city's name, she came home and found a postcard on her doormat. No stamp, no address, just an image on the front. A photograph of a river, any river, blue-gray, with ash swirling in the current like smoke made liquid. On the back, in handwriting both familiar and not, were 3 words. Laughter travels upstream. No signature, no explanation. Her stomach went to water and then decided to be a stone. She turned the card over. The printer's mark in small text at the bottom. A company name she did not recognize. She looked it up, and the search results were the usual noise: photographers, a small press, a logo that looked like an eye pretending not to be an eye. She sat on the couch and placed the card on the coffee table and stared at it until it became a rectangle without meaning. That night, the wind moved in the alley like something learning to walk. The building creaked, pipes thunked, distant laughter, city laughter, rose and fell like a tide. Mei Lin slept. In her dream, Bao ran ahead on a path through long grass, turning back every few steps to be sure she followed. The golden light on his fur could have been sunset or something else. When she woke, the sound in the room was the sound of her own breath. Online, a new rumor came and fed. Another toy, another panic. The Labubus headlines shrank to think pieces archived behind paywalls and forum posts that became mulch for newer threads. Some articles stayed, shaking a finger at counterfeit safety hazards. A few kept reminding readers there was never any proof of hauntings, no matter how much the internet tried to square a circle by shouting at it. Others catalogued the summer's demon talk and filed it under Very 2025. Mei Lin did not correct anyone anymore. She went to work. She came home. She bought a plant and remembered to water it half the time. She stopped avoiding the park where small dogs in sweaters argued with pigeons. She did not buy another doll. On some evenings, she caught herself listening for a laugh that did not come, and the quiet felt like a miracle unadvertised. Months later, a friend from the toy shop, ex-friend, really, the way time erodes labels, messaged to say that one of the store's regulars had claimed their golden Labubus had moved overnight, closer to the bed, teeth somehow looking sharper in the morning light. People will believe anything, the friend typed, followed by a string of crying laughing emojis that did not look like laughter at all. Mei Lin typed, maybe, then she deleted it and typed, be kind. She went to the window and watched the city do what it always did. Breathe fumes, dream money, feel ancient and newborn in the same second. She imagined, for a moment, all the rooms in all the buildings stacked like cells in a hive, each with its own story humming. In a few of them, a white or brown or gold Labubus sat on a shelf and did nothing, gathering dust. In a few others, someone shivered and turned on a light and decided to sleep with the TV murmuring. And in one, perhaps, an ear twitched. A grin widened. A laugh, small and wrong, rubbed itself against the dark. The postcard stayed on her table for a long time. Some nights she turned it face up. Some nights face down. Eventually, she tucked it into the talisman book, either to keep it safe or to keep it quiet. People say, there are only 2 stories. A stranger comes to town. A person leaves on a journey. But there is a third, the oldest one, the one that keeps our teeth sharp. A thing returns from fire, from water, from earth, from the place we put it because we didn't know where else to put it. If you listen hard enough, you can hear it walking back. And if you laugh at that idea, if your mouth goes a little wide in the dark, be careful. The dark can be an excellent mirror.